your software development agency might not have a future. And here's why. For context, I have run one for a few years and recently I've been exploring other ventures. And it's because I really understood a lot about the dynamics of the future of software agencies for a few different reasons that I want to break down in this video. The core thesis is that just a software development agency, a general software development agency, is going to have to end up picking one of three roads. Number one is making custom software for very large clients or pretty large clients. Number two is focusing on one very specific use case, which usually eventually becomes some kind of software as a service platform, but that transition can be very hard or take a lot of time. Number three is ultimately a kind of outsourcing or outstaffing agency where you don't really do projects as a company. You just kind of provide developers for people. So somebody says, hey, I need, 5 developers, and you just give them those developers and they manage it themselves. And I'm going to explain why, this is the case. And this isn't necessarily like bad news or you should like give up on the software business. It's just explaining how you need to think about growing this in the long run if you would like to do that. And I'm also going to explain kind of what I'm doing with mine and my situation as well. For starters, why does it have to be like this? The custom software market is really only massively profitable when you're at a very large scale, because when you impact, the bottom line of Adidas or something, right, which is a multi-billion-dollar business, when you lift their efficiency by even 1%, that is multiple millions of dollars. And so you can take out of that a lot of money because let's say you make a project that costs $200,000 and it saves a company $1 million. And so that investment makes sense from the company's point of view. If you don't choose one of these roads, you are going to end up in what I believe is going to be like MVP hell. And basically, you're just going to make a lot of MVPs for very cheap clients for a very long time. You can make some money doing that. That's perfectly fine, but you're not going to be able to scale into multiple millions. When you think about custom software, the way you sell custom software is you basically say, listen, I can make you more efficient by X percentage. That will save you a lot of money. And so you should pay me a smaller amount of money to make that software. So for example, it's costing you $100,000 a year in accountants to take care of your invoices. And I will build you software that takes care of those invoices for, $50,000. And so you're saving $50,000. That is why you should do a software development project with me. At its core, that's a really great pitch. Unfortunately, it's very troublesome to make these kinds of pitches because anything that is a really large percentage uplift, so anything that, increases business efficiency by 10%, which is, already pretty big at any business that does a few million, most of these problems are experienced by more than one business. So that example where I just gave you about invoices, more than one company probably loses time making invoices. And so what ends up happening is that somebody will make a SaaS for it. And the reason that SaaS beats custom software usually is because they make a generalizable solution, right? Because it's software. And so they can customize it for different clients, but ultimately they can turn it into a kind of SaaS product. Let's say it costs $50,000 to build a product. In order for you to make money, you have to charge a client $60,000, right? 50K is going to be development costs. 10K is your profit. If somebody makes it as SaaS, they have a 50K cost before they can make any money. Instead of selling it only to one customer, because it's a software as a subscription, let's say they sell it to 6 different clients for 10K each. They have now made 60K in total, but for each individual client, each client has only paid $10,000. You can scale the numbers up and down here, but fundamentally, it's very hard to compete as a custom software development agency with a lot of different business problems because somebody out there has probably made a SaaS out of it because most problems are experienced in more than one situation. Unless a business has a truly unique problem that nobody else in the world has, custom software development is not more profitable than making a specialized solution for multiple people who have that same problem, which is why one of the roads is basically focusing on a very, very niche problem. But discovering that problem is the part that takes a long time. Unless you have a specific customer insight, it's hard to pinpoint, a problem that nobody has solved already. If somebody sees that, usually a SaaS is built pretty fast. That can take some time, but it is absolutely possible. Or you get into a really specific function. So for example, I one time knew of a development agency that did specifically like EdTech analytics. And so they were really good at implementing analytics into education technology products. That's just what they did. Another agency that I saw that scaled pretty well was like cybersecurity, specifically for managing like admin access on all kinds of different systems. I don't know the details there, but I know that their pitch was hyper specific. If you don't find that niche problem, it's going to be really hard for you to sell that, hey, I'll make you an invoicing software because somebody else has probably seen that invoicing problem and made some kind of SaaS out of it. There is an exception to this where you can make custom software for each different client. and still make a lot of money. And that's generally when you start working with larger clients that make multiple millions in revenue and profit. And the reason for that is that when you're talking about a few percentage in efficiency boosts, maybe that's not a SaaS because like it's pretty specific. It's not generalized enough. So take, for example, a glass manufacturing company, which I actually worked with for a little while in the US. They were using this software subscription called Procore. And Procore, I think, was charging them on a revenue basis. And so they were losing a lot of money to Procore, and they realized that out of Procore, they didn't use every single feature. And so they just needed some features, and they were like, oh, if we just do this as a small custom project, maybe a couple $100,000 to develop, we're going to do this and we're going to save a lot of money. That does work, but that only works when you are working with clients that make multiple millions, right? Because you need businesses that make money in order for them to have some bottom line to really save, right? So if you add 1-2% efficiency with your custom solution that they didn't get before, so 1 or 2% extra margin, that 1 or 2% needs to be, a lot of money in order for you to charge a pretty substantial price and make some money too. So that is why, firms like Accenture make billions and they do a lot of IT outsourcing, but Accenture only works with big guys, right? Accenture does IT custom development for Adidas, and Adidas makes multiple billions. So of course they'll make like some custom solutions, but at the enterprise level, it's a very different conversation. In my experience, when you're starting as a freelancer or something, breaking into enterprise is pretty difficult unless you have enterprise contacts and some enterprise experience, right? And so this was one of the struggles that I felt when I was looking down that road. And I was like, how do I break into this? Because I know I need to work with bigger clients to make more money, but I don't know how to outreach to them because I don't understand them super well. And this is also a part where having a custom pitch works way better, right? But you can do like lots of different styles of projects, custom software development, and make a lot of money when you work with pretty large clients. So that's a great road to go down too if you can crack enterprise sales. And then you also have that SaaS road. So like you eventually figure out some kind of niche problem, and then you just double down on that and just become the analytics for ed tech companies, become the, admin security management company. And then last of all is you become a software outsourcing house, if you will. So basically, if you don't find a repeatable problem that you can build for multiple clients, if you don't find that you can crack enterprise sales, the other option is to basically a situation in which people just go to you because they need somebody fast who they trust and they happen to come to you. There, you're really just providing talent on demand. You're not really going to be managing and getting in the details of a project. Ultimately, what you're going to be doing is managing a database of developers, right? And you like kind of lend those developers to your clients. Think about companies like Torque.dev, which is one of the larger kind of like outsourcing companies that works with the US. And so they help large American companies hire in Latin America very fast. Competition there is very tough. Competition in all of these three paths is tough. This is why it's very hard to maintain a generalist agency at a very small size. And so if you are a software development agency or some kind of automator or something like that, and you are working with really small clients, I would just be wary about these different paths, right? And ideally you want to start niching down into something. I think the easiest path here is to niche down until you're really good at one particular type of thing. I noticed this like years ago, and I found myself building a lot of different MVPs, and I got good at that. I know how to build relationships with clients that make me a lot of money in the long run per deal. But in order to really break into that like kind of 7-figure range, which by the way, I never did with my software development agency, I know that I would need to pick one of these roads. Since then, I took this whole little journey out to San Francisco with this accelerator program because I wanted to explore the VC world. And through that big journey, I also realized I'm very interested in the M&A space. And so I'm actually likely to kind of try and exit my agency to focus on this next thing because I don't want to do two things at a time. It's a very, very big lesson to me in terms of like how I could have scaled that to really observe that firsthand. Just a development agency is not really a specific business, right? Because you're kind of doing what people tell you to do, kind of like just renting your developers, but you're also kind of a consultancy, right? Because you maybe manage projects a little bit, and it's a weird in between. And I think you really want to be picking like one of those business models where either you become a consultancy that's very good at providing firms with a particular strategy that they need. And generally consultancy makes a lot more money when you work with larger clients because you make a percentage of the value that you add. What that percentage is worth depends on the size of the company. If you help a company that makes $100,000 a year and you add 10% to their margins, you've added 10K. And so you can't charge more than 10K. And that's, on the higher end of things. Otherwise, it's a bad deal for the company and you get bad reviews and they'll never recommend you. You need to work with larger clients if you want to go down this like consulting sort of route. If you find one super specific niche problem, then you can spread your base of costs so that, you pay 50K to build the solution the first time and then you keep on selling it and then you can make a lot of money. Or, you go down that road of just being the guy with good developers and a good team. That can make a lot of money too, but you got to be clear about which road you want to go down. Straddling two roads at the same time is usually how you end up not really kind of making things work. I know that I didn't commit to one of these fast enough, and I really should have. But one of the struggles in being a small business owner is that you kind of have to do whatever it takes to survive. And sometimes that means taking on projects that aren't ideal. I certainly take with me a lot of lessons. And right now, like, my agency is not my main focus, but I certainly learned a whole lot. And like, if I was starting again or running it right now, I would really be thinking about how do I figure out which one of these roads I want to double down on completely and ignore everything else. If people ask what you do and you say you're a software development agency, the next question is, what problem do you solve? If the problem you solve is that you give people developers when they need them, then you're going down that outsourcing road. If the problem you solve is like, oh, I do analytics for edtech companies, you're going down that niche road, which is a really great one too. If the problem that you solve is that you help companies implement technology to make operations more efficient, you got to work with bigger companies to make more money. Not necessarily just more companies, because if you do $5,000 projects at a time, to do 10,000 of those is such insanely complex scale. You need so many different client relationships and things like that. Consultancy is a lot about trust. And so it's very hard to scale up to that 10,000, project mark when you're making very, very little amounts of money per project. The consultancy model is heavily based around like, who do I trust that can help sort this out for me? That's basically the name of the game when it comes to enterprise sales and stuff like that. As you lean into the consulting world, you get into a whole different set of problems and it's a different business model. If you really get into consulting, you might be looking at selling info products and stuff like that. And that's not software development anymore, right? You're really stepping away from that world of developing stuff. If you want to build out projects and still make money, building out projects is expensive. And so you need to move into larger clients where expensive projects make sense for them because they still save more money than they are currently like spending. If you want to be building projects fully, you are going to be needing to charge multiple tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands for a project. And so that needs to save, 2 times or more that value for the company that you are selling to. So whoever your client is, you got to save them $200,000 and charge them $100,000. That's how you scale that and get a really, really strong reputation there. But that's really, you're talking about going to bigger and bigger companies. And I had a few clients that were on the larger end, but definitely it was through relationships and it was a hard time to struggle because I also didn't niche down. And so my offering wasn't specific enough for a lot of these larger companies. I know for a fact that like I developed a lot of other skills in terms of how to run a really great development agency at a small scale and how to still be like very profitable within the kind of 6-figure range. If you want to get in this game and really see it through and really succeed, you got to be planning about this stuff, like this specifically. A lot of people will tell themselves that their software development agency is going to make a lot of money just by doing more and more MVPs. And I think that's really challenging. I mean, sure, you can use AI and stuff like that, but you're just going to be selling cheaper and cheaper MVPs. You're unlikely to make successful MVPs. Most of the people who hire you to build their MVPs are going to be tech companies that don't have technical talent in them, right? So somebody who wants to do a startup but doesn't know how to build an app just like contacts you and asks you to build it. Most of the time, a tech company that is building a tech product without having a technical team in their company that's completely dependent on an outside agency, that's usually not a great way to start a company. I actually have had some clients that were in this situation and did very well though. So it is possible, but I don't think it's a business model that scales extremely well because you're racing to the bottom, right? MVPs are all about cost. People are very cost sensitive in that range. Generally, people are competing on price, and so your profits are going to get cut out really fast. Unless you double down on some niche. So for example, you're really good at design or really good at user analytics and so forth. And then you get back into one of those three roads that I was talking about. Anyway, I hope this video is useful. If you're doing some kind of development business, software development business, this is a very useful reflection that I had some time ago for somebody who is like building in the software space. Leave any questions in the comments if you have them. I hope this helps. I'm sorry it was a pretty long ramble. I'm going to check those comments as well now, and I'm going to head to sleep. So good night, good morning, wherever you are. I hope this was useful.